Eric, what's up, man?
Happening, Jason?
How are you, dude? How you been? How's the rest of the school for you?
Excellent. So that was my first day doing the California Superbike School, and I learned a lot. I've been racing and riding for 11 years, riding for 16 years, I think it is. Been at the racetrack for 11, so feel like I know kind of what I'm doing out there. But there's always more to learn. There's always someone faster. There's more techniques to master.
Yeah,
It's a never-ending kind of learning curve. So I was happy to do it. Be a student at taking the course, and I also was getting evaluated to become a coach for them as well. So I did pass my riding portion exam, and I passed the oral test where you're conveying the information. Can you speak about it in a coherent way? So I was happy to pass those two. Now I'm just kind of waiting for the final say so on their decision for California
nice,
Superbike School, and I'm super excited for it. That could be like a dream job.
dude. Yeah, I can see how that must be awesome. Like that's really cool, bro. Congrats.
For sure. And you took it as a student as well? Were you taking the level one like I was?
Yeah, I did the level one, and then I went back the second day, did level two.
Nice. And I hear that level two is really focused on vision.
Yeah, quite a bit. Like what you're looking at, like what you're not looking at, like wide field view versus narrow, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. And something that I had never really thought about before is like you're obviously always looking for a turn-in point, right? You're looking for your apex, but I never really thought about a pre-apex. That's a new concept for me.
Well, they talked about that. They talked about an exit point. They're like, yeah, you get into the turn and you hit your apex, and then you're like, now what?
Right.
Yeah,
So
it
there's
was
a
it
lot
was,
of
it
putting
was
it
interesting.
together, and you miss that initial turning point, you screw up your whole corner.
Oh, it's all over. It is all over.
And you don't really get another chance until the next lap because you already missed your turning point. You're not going to really recover too well from there. Just make the corner now and get through it.
That's it. You just scrape by and hope for the best.
And today is August 10th. We got Jason Wojanowski, I think it is. So EricSwahnRacing.com podcast, I think is number 109, I believe. So getting up there in the numbers.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome, man. You really so tell me about, what are some of the things that you are learning from people on the podcast? And like tell me like what's that looking like?
So actually, the reason I did the California Superbike School in the first place is because I had Travis Wyman on here, who is a coach for them, and I was just talking to him for an hour or two, and just like I'm realizing he's a professional athlete. He's also a coach for Ford Performance, for open wheel cars, and for motorcycle racing. So I'm like, damn, how do I do something like that? Like I have all these, trophies behind me, but like, how do I make money coaching people and be still at the racetrack? Maybe not racing, but making money in a different way at the track. So he's like, well, you probably could with all your credentials. Like, why don't you just go down that road? So I had worked an event at Road America for Moto America last year, and they said I just happened to be on the email blast, and it was for an MSF course, and so it was we want instructors. You guys are all motorsport related. Maybe somebody in here would be a good fit. So I was like, well, there's probably an MSF in my state. I don't have to go to Wisconsin. I'm in Michigan. just north of Detroit. So I started looking around for coaching MSF, Motorcycle Safety Foundation stuff in my state, and then got certified for that. I've taught 7 weekends so far of that, getting paid to teach people how to ride motorcycles for the first time. So I'm an instructor for them now for the basic rider course. I plan on getting certified for additional courses that they teach, like advanced rider course, and I think they have adventure bikes and like off-road skills, things like that, all kinds of different skills, but more slow speed stuff. I'm looking for going 100 miles an hour at a racetrack, a little bit quicker is my passion.
Right.
So started looking into racetrack coaching and stuff like that, and California Superbike was on the list. They said, let's do an interview. I did a 70-minute interview with them. And then they said, all right, sign up, show up, you get evaluated. And I did all that, borrowed a bike to do it. I don't have a race bike right now. So I borrowed my friend's bike, 14-year-old Kawasaki with used tires. I took it out to a local track in Michigan and got the cobwebs off. I haven't been riding every weekend for a while. And got back up to pace on used tires, felt good. Came to Virginia for VIR and finally got it done. So Now I'm just kind of waiting. And in the meantime, yesterday I just got approved for USMCA. So I'm a now United States Motorcycle Coaching Association certified coach with new certifications in CPR, AED, first aid, sexual abuse awareness training, cardiac, heat, and concussion wise certified. So if anything were to happen, at least I have some basic skills. I'm not an EMT or EMS, first
Yeah.
of all, but I can at least do a few things and get you settled before the main guys show up.
So man, like, so you really, it sounds like you really have like a heart for coaching people and
Yeah,
like teaching people.
I love it. The thing is, if you if you get somebody who's pretty skilled and you coach them, chances are they'll start crashing less, hopefully, is the goal. And if you crash less, you'll stay in the sport longer, which will make it maybe appear safer for people wanting to join it. So if you're like wadding your stuff up and crashing all the time, chances are your friends are not going to want to start participating in that, right?
Right. Yeah, that sounds real fun. Yeah, I'm gonna crash every weekend.
Yeah, so if you're safer about it, if you know what you're doing, I think the sport grows and the riders grow. People stay in it longer because they're not plateauing. They keep improving, and it's just rewarding to see like people who've never seen a clutch before at an MSF course. By the end of the weekend, they're riding. They know how to ride a motorcycle. Most of them are passing. It's a fairly high pass rate. I will say that the courses are sponsored by the manufacturers like Kawasaki and Yamaha, so they have a little bit of an interest to pass
Yeah.
the majority of people, but we can't pass them just because we like them. We
Right.
have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
strict set of guidelines that it's not objective, it's not subjective. It's very cut and dry, black and white. Did you put a foot down or not? I don't have any real say so for it. So
Well, and I don't know if there's anything wrong with that. Like, I can see a little bit of a conflict of interest, but at the same time, if you have something fun, you have a product a motorcycle that people can enjoy and get a lot of benefit from, why not train them how to use it as safely as possible versus having people get out there and hurt themselves and have all these bad experiences, which is not only robs people of the joy of riding, but also like, yeah, it hurts the manufacturers too. And so like it could be a win-win.
yeah, I think it's good. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just it seems like a low bar of entry. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I don't really want this guy to be riding in the street, but he technically passed the test. So we tell him at the end of it, like, this does not mean you should go ripping on
Right.
the freeway at 80 miles an hour. You are parking lot certified, is what I like to tell him. Like, you have
Right. Right.
gone
Right.
only in second gear, maybe 30 miles an hour. Take it easy, ride the back roads, come out here and practice some more, practice your skills, practice the slow speed stuff, practice braking, practice the swerve, when you don't have a semi truck behind you and you might stall the bike on the road. So, um,
Do you feel like track days are a good intermediate for that, or they're really not ready for that yet? They'll get hurt. I mean, even the slower groups tend to cruise like pretty fast. So like I'm wondering like what could be put in there as like a gradual intermediate step between that and like hitting the track.
yeah, I think the track is a great place to practice your skills, even in the novice session. As long as you can ride a motorcycle and not stall the bike every time, and you know where all the controls are, you can name them, you can talk about them. I think you're probably ready to go to a racetrack. Now, places like California Superbike School do not train first-time riders,
Yeah.
but I think it'd be better like a sport bike track time type of situation where it's more of an open track, but it's still grouped into sessions where you have coaching. I think is a very valuable thing. Um, I think you should at least be able to ride a motorcycle before you get to a racetrack. You shouldn't be like first time, now I'm on a
Right.
racetrack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just
But,
not your dangerous.
but maybe first season is still acceptable, I'd say, because where else do you get to really practice your skills? Otherwise, you're going 40 miles an hour and you stop. You go 40
Yeah.
miles an hour and you stop. It's like you're going straight and there's not a whole lot of curves. So yeah, racetrack's the best place to practice your skills. There's no cops, there's no minivans, there's usually no sand. It's predictable. If there is an animal, hopefully there's a flag out for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and or they shut it down if there's a deer close to the racetrack, things like that.
It's just way more controlled. I
Oh
think,
yeah,
your chances of I mean, of course things still happen, people still crash, but like you're not gonna have somebody pull out in front of you or hit a huge pothole or something you didn't see coming. So yeah, I'm with you, man. So I don't know if I told you this. Like I raced in the 90s up in New England, and it had literally been 23 years since I'd been on a bike. And my first time I went up to NC Bike and I got a track day in there. Man, my first lap, I was like, this is horrible. This sucks. What am I doing? This is dangerous. I'm going to kill myself. And then the session was horrible. I got passed by everybody, bro. Like it was, I'm like, this is embarrassing. And then I went out, I'm like, I can't give up yet. I gotta do it again. So I went out for my second session. By the mid second session, I'm like, okay, all right, like, okay, I'm getting a little more comfortable. Then a control riders, like they had some control riders, and I'm like, all right, he's gonna give me a tow. I'm gonna follow him around the track. Dude, by the end of that second session, going into the third, I'm like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Like, I so miss this. And finally I start passing people, and like, I still, have a way to go, but it's such a great place to go and expand and build your skills. And, Mr. Man, and I think there's so many applications that you can, when you're riding a bike, you can take a lot of those lessons and apply it to real life. Like there's so many different lessons that are so applicable. It's just such a great thing. I love it, man.
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. It's like you make a mistake and it allows you to either dwell on that mistake for another couple corners, or it's like, okay, shut up, refocus, and just go,
Yeah. Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that to your mind, to yourself in your helmet. And it's like, I was just playing the sim racer last night. I put on Instagram live. I had it right behind me, just filming me. And I made mistakes. I lost the car a couple times, but it allows you to say, okay, refocus and go. And that's so important for life because people make mistakes all the time in life, and you just gotta refocus and go.
Well, dude, but most people don't do that. Most people will screw something up and then they'll beat themselves up about it for months, days, years after. And like they don't forgive themselves for that. And I think, yeah, training a bike, you learn how to let go, because guess what? You got another 15 corners coming right at you right now, and you can screw those up too if you want, or you can get over your mistake and try to learn and just, I think the learning curve is so much quicker because you have that real-time opportunity, and like that's a big deal, like you said.
Yeah, and what better place to do it where there's one, if not two, or multiple ambulances running with EMT, EMS personnel in it that'll be on site in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. I've heard this as a warning, and this is a warning to all riders who are using phone mounts and GPS mounts on their motorcycle. What happens if you're out in the boonies in some desolate area? You're just having fun, you're riding, maybe you crash, maybe you fall down. Now say you're going on the freeway, you're at 70 miles an hour, you're going to separate from your motorcycle. Now maybe you broke your legs or something, some injury, you broke your arm, who knows. You're on the ground, now you're 100 feet away from your motorcycle and there's nobody else around, and your phone is strapped to your bike.
Mm.
How are you going to get back to your motorcycle when you're injured and you have no other ways of communication and you're on a solo ride? So like if you're in that situation, they have other things that you can wear on your body as like a beacon or alert system. I'm not sure of those companies' names, but I've heard of them before, where you can like press a button and it sends a pulse out for help if you don't have your phone on you, because now it's attached to your bike.
Yeah. Dude,
Separate from your bike.
it's like I've fallen and I can't get up kind of thing.
Yeah, because
Kind of literally, right?
yeah, my mom recently had a fall and she broke her arm and broke her leg, and she was in the house all by
Oh
herself.
man.
She said she had to crawl like 40 feet to get to a phone, for like
Oh,
an hour or something. I don't know. It was like,
dude.
that's not good.
Yeah, that's really bad. Yeah.
So it's like the same kind of thing with the motorcycle. And if you're at a racetrack, all of that stuff is gone. You don't have to worry about that. If you crash, someone is going to be there really quick to help you out.
Well, and so we had a crash at our session at the California Superbike School, and the ambulance went out, and I'm like, oh man, we get the red flag. We go in, and then he was fine. Like he came in and we're talking with him and he explained what happened, but like the safety is there if you need it. And that's really reassuring. Like most times people are just fine, but better safe than sorry kind of thing. So it was good to see that. I hate seeing people get hurt.
Yeah, it's you get a little bit desensitized to injuries at the racetrack because you see them so often. But being a track marshal, I've been doing that for a little while, and picking up people at the track, picking up motorcycles, waving the flag, talking to race control on the headset and all that. I love it. It's pretty cool being a part of it, and you really can make a difference of people's lives and injuries, and just responding quickly can save a crash.
Are you seeing this? So I'm curious about that, man. That must be so I did some bodybuilding back in the day, and then I became a judge, and it was cool to see it from that different perspective, like from from being on stage to see observing them. So when you were doing that, like what are some of the things you're seeing? Like, are you seeing the same mistakes over and over again? Like, did you learn anything that you could
Oh
take into
yeah.
your own riding?
Yeah, I mean, different tracks, different lines. You see the fast guys come through, and they're on a different line than everybody else. It's like they're riding differently. Um, they're just taking different lines. They're getting on the throttle, getting on the brakes at different places. They're hitting bumps, and they're not caring about them. They're just ripping over them. I remember I was working, I think it's turn 9, the carousel at Road America, and there's a bump on the inside there that everybody's like tentative with, and
Mm.
here comes Jake Gagne just almost tucking the front on that bump every time, but he's like, I'm sending it, I'm just putting it here and pitching it in, and yeah, they just ride differently. They're taking the curbings differently. It's like watching a top rack kind of guy. Um, he just rides differently than everybody else, and you can see those things on the racetrack. And I would even go as far to say I didn't quite understand how they were even flagging the course, like which direction they're looking, or nobody's really paying attention when they go by and they're like, okay, there's no flag, I don't need to watch, you know. But you see mistakes, you see a lot of mistakes, like newer riders. We had one guy at Blackhawk Farms in Illinois. He was, I think, maybe a first time on the track kid, almost a child, and he stopped multiple times on the racetrack.
Oh.
No, don't do that. Keep going. Like
Mm.
you're 100, 200 feet away from him. Sometimes you can't really talk to him very easily, but you can give him hand signals like keep going, keep going.
Yeah, right,
And
man.
then
That's
race,
dangerous.
call it into race control, rider number, whatever. Situation happened, and then race control after the session, bring him in, talk to him. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. But there's always like people making mistakes, or you sometimes hear, oh, rider blah 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 crossing the blend line, entering the track, things like that. You hear all the facts from the track, and there's always somebody screwing up something. Or
Yeah.
there's always what we call a problem child. It doesn't have to be a child, but a problem person who's like, oh, this guy went off the track again. This guy crashed again. It's like, oh, same guy. Like, what's he doing wrong? It's a fundamental problem that this one person is usually doing wrong. And with the coaching, you can try to weed out that stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, you mentioned seeing experienced guys doing different lines and doing things differently, and it struck me, man. So I got my lap times at the superbike school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am slow. And like in the meantime, I think I'm hauling. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna making good speed. And yeah, of course, I get stuck behind somebody once in a while, but not every lap. And it struck me like, I mean, these guys are, I'm going like 30 seconds slower than an average guy. And sorry, not an average guy, like a fast guy. And so I'm thinking like, how, and by the way, for context for your listeners, like, so that means like I'm running like a 2 minute lap versus the guys who are fast who are doing like a minute 30 or less, like 28, 29s. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what in the world are these guys doing that differently? Like, because what is it really that separates like the best guys from like the average guys? Like, you know what I mean? Like it seems like, okay, yeah, bike technology maybe a little bit, but I mean, at Superbike school, I had that BMW 1000 RR. That was a fast bike. So I can't sit there and justify like, oh, they have a faster bike. Like it's me, obviously. And so like, what are some of those things you see like that really separate the best guys from like just the run of the pack?
There's multiple things, but one thing that really sticks out is just maximizing the bike's performance in all areas. And that's hard to do because it's comes up to your survival instincts. It's like, oh, you think you're going to crash. Well, sometimes getting back on the gas will help solve that problem and kind of even things out. Put your suspension in a better working mode. You think you're going in too hot, so you get on the brakes, which now compresses your suspension, so you have less travel. But if you were to get back on the gas, transfer that weight 60-40 to the rear, it puts the suspension in a more compliant zone to actually get out of that corner. If you start looking at things like data, you can really tell what people are doing on the bikes. Where data as far as where you're getting on the brakes, where you're getting on the throttle, how hard you're getting on those two controls. Um, Whereas years ago, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you're one of the fastest guys at this track at Gingerman Raceway in like 2011." And he said, "I want to put my GPS lap timer on your bike because I've been doing laps all weekend and I'm stuck at this pace. I want to see what you're doing out there." And I had never really seen data before. And so I did that. He put the timer on my bike for a couple laps for a session, came back in and we looked at it. And he said, "You're braking like 50 feet later than I am in this one corner. And so that means I'm on the gas 50 feet longer. I'm carrying more speed in that corner. My exit's faster, and everything is a
Mhm.
little bit quicker. My corner speed is faster. My entry speed is faster. My exit speed is faster. So by carrying 50 feet longer on the gas, that might be another 3-4 tenths of a second in that one corner. Um,
Mhm.
Also, when we're at California Superbike School, it's how do you call it? It's like an intermediate session. It's a 6 foot passing rule everywhere. So I was getting what do you call slowed down a lot because I had to wait to pass people because it's a tricky section in the back, a lot of corners, and you can't always make a clean pass 6 feet around somebody on the outside. So at when you have more of an open track, I think your times would be faster. You're not being held up a little bit here and there. And just seat time. I mean, you said you've been off the bike for quite a while, so you're getting back into it. And these riders who are doing 28s, 27s at VIR, I'm sure they are on the bike every weekend, every other weekend, multiple times a month. They're doing training at home. They're on multiple different bikes, like smaller bikes, mini bikes for training, maybe a supermoto in the evening. They're bicycle riding in between. It's a obsession. Like,
Yeah.
think balance is important, but to be great at any one thing, I think you have to be a little obsessed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed, man. That's so true. And I think also the other thing you mentioned is like perception. Like you're coming in hot, you're gonna, and so I this has happened to me multiple times, even when I was racing, is like I feel like I'm like this thing's about to go out on me. Like I'm just holding on for my dear life. And then someone comes like boom right by me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What in the world? Like, how is that even possible? So I wonder, like, and of course, technical capabilities are super important. Like you need to have the fundamentals down. You need to know how to ride well. But I also wonder, because this has happened to me quite a bit at VIR this recently, is like I feel like I'm coming in hot, so I'll get on the brakes. And then I get a turn. I'm like, man, I'm going way too slow. Like, so that perception, that fear, I guess, really can mess with you. Like, and you're capable of so much more, but you kind of like maybe play it safe. And I'm wondering, like, is it in your experience, like when you take guys, you've coached people and you're coaching people now, and you're going to be likely working with super bikes. Is this just a gradual, like, hey, like I'm just going to go a little bit faster and then a little bit, and each time it's just a super gradual advancement? Or have you seen something else like really shift how people kind of perform and how they get over fear?
Yeah, so I would say that's definitely the safest way to do it is a gradual progression where you're maybe going a half a second faster, a half a second faster at a time, and then it slows down maybe 4 tenths of a second faster, and then 3 tenths. Once you get closer to the limit, then you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be making those gains smaller and smaller. But what I see, and the fastest guys, what they do, they go the opposite way. They go, all right, what's 100%? Let me go 100%, see if I can make the corner. And then if I don't make the corner, let me back it down from there. So
Oh
it's a
man.
completely different reversal of, all right, let me slowly get faster because that's what I do. I mean, I'm not trying to throw the bike down the road. That's definitely the safest way to do it. But if you want to be setting lap records, that's not the way to go.
Mm.
And I've seen people do it that way. And you just have to be really good with your motocross skills because you're going to be running off the track a couple of times if you have that mentality. I would
Right.
not recommend that mentality, but if you're looking to go pro racing, that's the mentality that they have. I've heard many people talk. It's like your first lap pace. If you want to be in the group, at the end of the race, your first lap has to be like near 100% because everybody else is going to be pushing that 100%, and you're going to be in the back of the pack because they're not. This is not amateur hour anymore. This is like
Yeah.
ATV professional racing and fastest guys in the country. We got other people coming from other countries to participate in our championship. Whatever championship you're watching, there's multiple nationalities, and everybody's looking for glory. And it's sometimes it's a win it or bin it mentality. I don't like that mentality because that's not a championship mindset, right? That's a one-off race winner mindset. Uh,
Mm.
you can make fast guys crash less, but it's really hard to make a slow guy go faster.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. So, and you think why do you think that is? Is it the slow guy going faster? Is it because they're taking the approach you mentioned of just sequential, like really incremental change? Or is there something there that's just it's just hardwired?
Some people have a lot of bad habits, and it's really hard to sometimes get out of those bad habits. You know, they even talk about the neuron in the California Superbike School, where every time you do that habit, you're ingraining that worse and deeper and deeper, and
Yeah.
so you get these myelin sheaths over that nerve, and every time you do it, it's actually making that neuron go faster and faster and faster, so it becomes an ingrained habit. It's really hard after 20 years of doing something to unlearn that bad habit and do something different. It's like you have to really focus on uh, those habits. And motorcycle racing is scary. It's dangerous. It has lots of risks. So people are very hesitant to push those boundaries, and it's a very mental game. I'd say motorcycle racing or any racing that has an engine is more mental than it is physical. Yes, you need to have a strong body. Yes, you need to have good working of your hands and your feet and all that stuff. But what's more important is maybe your mental balls, for lack of a better word, your confidence, your ability to push. One thing that I think I was always really good at was pushing. Always, are you are you comfortable in this corner? Could you go faster? Is there another tenth? Like, are you pushing for that tenth, or are you just kind of laying back and trying to bring it home? You know, there's a point where, yeah, I'm always going to try to bring it home, but are you still pushing? Like I just saw on my feed, I took a screenshot of Mark Marquez a couple years ago at Valencia, where he almost lost the front to win that world championship. I mean, he's got the championship in the bag. He just has to finish this race. And it's like the last lap, and he's still pushing the front, almost tucking the front for like 100 feet, leaving a black line on the ground. That's the difference between the guy in last place and Mark Marquez or whoever's winning the championship that year. It's like they are always pushing on the limit. They are never just, oh, okay, I'm going to, putz around and bring it home. They don't have that gene. I don't know what that is, but they don't have that.
Man, and so do you think so when these guys I mean they have this attitude of pushing, do you think they still ride with fear, or do you think they've just learned how to compartmentalize or control it and they just don't even think about it? Like they just, focus in and like yeah, I crash, whatever, I'm going.
Yeah, it's like it's a different level, man. I can't even begin to pick apart a MotoGP rider's brain, but it's amazing to see and watch, and I've learned so much just from watching racing, even on TV. I think you pick up a lot of what they're doing on the bike. You pick up. I always tried to emulate that body position. I'm not really an elbow dragger yet. I would like to be at some point. I think it's just a cool club to be in, but more than that, just putting your body in that position, I think, is very beneficial for how your bike works. If you can, get off the bike, get your body down and over to whatever side you're leaning towards, it's really helpful. And I've been experimenting lately with supermoto. So I got a supermoto bike. It's now my street bike, grocery getter. But supermoto is a totally different body position, body style. So I'm not the guy with this foot out too much. But you do have to really counterweight the bike. You can't be leaning off to the inside as much because you don't have the grip in the dirt. You just wash right out. So you kind of have to push the bike down and now counterweight with your body so that the bike is balanced. So
Huh.
I'm trying to learn a new thing and trying to expand my my knowledge. Been doing flat track and motocross and kart tracks with the supermoto lately. So trying to get into the sport and do cheap track days. That's like $60 a day.
Yeah, that's a little more affordable, like sustainable. Yeah, they can get expensive, man. Well, and I'm guessing too, you're really kind of like cross training here because you're learning different skills that now you could take and apply in some context, and maybe you have to modify or tweak it, but to the superbike stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I get to ride in my backyard. I built a little trail in the backyard in the forest and the trees. So I haven't hit a tree yet, but I'm sure I have it one day.
Right, right. Yeah, you might want to add some padding around those or some gym mats or something, right?
Be a good idea. I do have bark guards. That's the only kind of padding I have around. It's like lever guards and lever protectors, hand guards, I guess you call them.
Oh, got it.
That should at least help me a little bit.
That's interesting, man. And so, speaking of body position, like so that's something that like I've realized like I need to work on. And so I started watching all his YouTube videos, and then I heard, I want to say, man, I could be wrong on this. I don't, maybe it wasn't. I was thinking Jason Pridmore, but I don't think it was him. Somebody's like, hey, listen, learning what the MotoGP guys are doing may not serve you because their bikes are so different and it's not even close to a production model. And then I'm hearing other people say, no, you should totally do that because they're the best in the world. And so it makes it a little bit confusing for someone who doesn't have that yet, who's trying to develop a skill when you hear such different, opinions on things. Like, how does somebody kind of discern like who I should listen to?
Yeah, it's difficult. Everybody's going to have an opinion. My opinion might not be perfect. The other guys might not be perfect. You got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt, and try it out for yourself and see what works, see what doesn't. That's a difficult question because there's so many different
I
philosophies out
know.
there. And I was just watching MotoGP, Jorge Martin on the Ducati, the purple bike. It looks like a purple dinosaur kind of.
Yeah,
And
Barney.
yeah, and I was watching the slow mo of him going around one of these corners, and he's almost dragging his shoulder. Like his arm, his humerus is on the ground. He's almost like a couple inches from his shoulder touching the ground. And I'm thinking like, I don't think that's possible on a stock 600cc motorcycle. I don't think you can actually do that. So yeah, some of the things that they're doing on the MotoGP bikes are just not physically possible with the physics that exists with the tire technology and the suspension that we have. I think their forks are like $100,000, like six figures for those Olin's fork, just the forks, just one part on the bike. So it's like, yeah, your tire technology is not MotoGP. You might not be able to drag your shoulder, but there are definitely guys dragging elbow, and I think that's probably the limit for production bikes.
Man, dude, how much, speaking of which, like I remember somebody asked me, like, hey, how much do you think a MotoGP bike costs? I'm like, I don't know, like a couple 100,000. They're like, ha.
It's
They're
like
like, no,
$2 million.
that they were telling me that. I'm like, what? I'm like, for a bike? Like, seriously? Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm like, is it really that different? They're like, dude, it's like a completely different animal. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Every single thing has been redesigned and redesigned, and they're prototype machines. I mean, you could buy one after the production year has ended, but they're not on the market. They're not like on Kawasaki dealerships. You gotta
Yeah, right,
find
right.
find the owner of the team and find it that way. So, or go to a museum and try to buy it from them.
Well, and so I was looking, I found a video on YouTube that was talking about how frequently the parts are replaced in those bikes. Like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
every 3 races they do this, every 5 races. And I'm like, man, like that, I can't even imagine, bro. This is a full-time big, it's a big deal. You need some real, pocketbooks to like fund these things.
Oh yeah, huge budgets, and I'm not sure what the turnover rate is for at MotoGP, but I heard years ago, I think through a TED talk actually, that Formula One, those cars have, I think it's 15% of brand new parts, like parts that just came off the lathe that have just been made, not just replacing old parts. 15% of the car is brand new that they're trying out new parts every single weekend. So they're
Man,
trying out like different aero, different reliability parts, different stuff for the engine, different stuff for the suspension components to make them, whether that's lighter or stronger or more durable or whatever the thing is they're trying to achieve. they're always constantly like, okay, this part worked, that's great. This part didn't work. It has a little bit of a scuff on it. Maybe let's try to fix that so we don't have to replace it as soon next time. So they're always trying to innovate and make new parts for the cars and bikes. It's quite wild. They have like 100 employees at one of these teams.
Man, so I was reading recently, and the gentleman who wrote the article, and I can't remember if it was like, it was one of these old school guys. He was saying, he's like, I can't even tell who the best riders are anymore because the bikes are so advanced. He's like, I feel like, turn off the ABS and the wheelie control and the traction, and you turn off all this stuff. He's like, then you'd start to see who can really ride. But he's like, you don't see people like high siding as much anymore, and you don't see as many crashes because the bikes are so advanced. How do you feel about that, man? And even when we were at the superbike school, they're like, yeah, you don't even have to, like, man, back in the 90s, I didn't even have a quick shifter. Like, everything was manual. There's no auto blip, like nothing. And I was like, man, like I've kind of mixed feelings about this. Like, on one hand, I don't want to be a dinosaur out there still using the clutch and like doing everything manually. On the other hand, I'm like, there's a certain art to it that I've always enjoyed. Like, learning how to do it feels, it's very satisfying, and it's almost like the bike can do a lot that I no longer have to do. Like, how do you think about that?
I think the technology improvements are good, but it does take some rider skill away from it. When almost all the time that I race, I didn't have a slipper clutch and I didn't have a quick shifter. So I think you should learn how to do it without, but it is definitely faster with those aids.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it, but yeah, there is some sort of issue with the pinnacle of development. It becomes not only a racing championship, it becomes a manufacturer's championship. So certain manufacturers, and those riders who are riding those bikes are just never going to win, which creates a problem because
Mm.
it's not a pure race anymore. It's both. It's like Formula One for motorcycles. So I think it's good that they're developing that technology, but I think it could be also cool to have a completely spec class for each class because yeah, you're getting away from who's the best rider, who's the best racer, who has the best race craft. You're getting into more who has a better engine, who's got the better suspension, which I don't typically care about. Who has the better parts? I want to see who's the better guy out or girl out there
Yeah.
racing.
It's interesting. Like, so back in the day when I was competing in bodybuilding, it was just one class. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
And then they started realizing, like, well, maybe, but here's what was happening as well, is like kind of by analogy and metaphor, like, how motorcycles are progressing. Well, physiques started progressing too, to like freakish proportions. And you have a guy who's like, 5'9", who's stepping on stage like 280 pounds, like shredded,
yeah.
of like 5% body fat. And they realize, like, wow, this is kind of getting out of control. Like, how can we recalibrate and make it so that, for instance, you can compare someone who's, 6'2" to 5'2", and so they started introducing all these different classes, like men's physique, which is different. And they had men's classic physique, which is trying to get guys that look like Arnold. And so you don't have these just mass monsters up there. And so, kind of similar, like a parallel, basically, like, hey, let's compare apples to apples.
Yeah,
And so I think that's a general, probably, I don't want to say a problem, but it's certainly an occurrence that I think, as sports, I mean, look at any of our sports now, like, a lineman that would have been competitive in the 80s would get destroyed today, like, because they're
yeah,
like, the guys are like 50 pounds heavier, and like, so
right.
I think it's a natural evolution of this kind of stuff to continue to advance, but at the same time, like, it is having repercussions.
For sure. And it would be cool. Like, I don't advocate for this because I'm a light guy. I'm about 151 pounds this morning, so pretty light. And every ounce counts when you're racing. So I always try to watch my diet and, all those things. But what if they had, like I said, a complete spec class for 600, maybe even the lightweights, 400 cc's, and then, 1,000 class, completely spec bikes. Everybody's on the same machinery and you have a ballast. So
Mm,
everybody's the same weight. Now, not everybody's the same size, so I don't know how you
right.
would equal that out with aerodynamic deficiencies or add-ons, but it would be just kind of cool to say, try to make everybody equal. before you even go out there. And I don't know what that would do, if it would make good racing. I mean, you see the Triumph class in Moto 2. That's great, man. They have so many people so close at the end of the race. It's very it's interesting to see that class develop, and they just added some more power to the Triumph. So sounds like they're going to have some higher RPMs, maybe some um, increased horsepower. So it's cool to see that class develop, and even the MotoGP race that was super close. That was a great race to watch. The past one that just happened, and super entertaining, and close at the finish.
Man, that's so what I'm hearing, like if this comes to fruition, I'm putting in my bid right now for the slow, old, and over 200-pound class. And
I'll take it.
right. So yeah, man, but it is interesting because when even on a track day, I'll notice some guys roll up and they have the full on. I mean, they got the outfit. Like they are outfitted. They have the whole camper and a bunch of tents and a bunch of bikes. And then you'll see somebody pull up in like they got a U-Haul 6-foot trailer for their bike and they're pulling it with like a Kia. And
Yeah.
you're like, good for you, bro. But like you gotta it's not as easy to compete with the money and the technology.
It is very difficult. Most of the time when I was competing, I was the guy with a Harbor Freight 6-foot trailer, competing against the guy who just has at least 15 grand more into his bike than mine even costs. It's like
Yeah.
I'm racing on a shoestring budget here, and this guy's got an A bike, a B bike, a C bike. I'm like, are you kidding me? I have a bike.
Right, man. It's totally different. Like, yeah, if you I mean, you're considering yourself lucky if you got a couple extra sets of foot pegs and like
Yeah.
some handlebars, and meanwhile they have a few extra bikes. Like,
Yeah, they got a whole separate spare two separate spare bikes. It's like, wow, that's incredible. I hope to be like that one day. Hope
yeah,
to be able to afford that. And how awesome would it be to have a bike for each class? Like have a lightweight
man.
bike, have a middleweight, have a super bike. That would be the ideal scenario, because for a long time I raced six classes. I did both C's, which is 600, both B's, which is 750, and both A's with 1000s, both meaning super stock and super bike. So I only had a stock 600, but I would race up in all those different classes. And I
Oh
actually
man.
won championships in the 1000, 750, and 600 racing on a 600. So it can be done. And certain tracks like Road America, you might struggle with because there's so many straightaways there, you're going to really struggle. But a track like Grattan or VIR, there's not a whole lot of long straightaways. So you can really compete with those guys, and you might struggle down the straightaway, but you'll get them in corners.
Which was your favorite class?
I really like the stock 600 class because that's where the most people are.
Okay.
750 classes are pretty small, pretty slim. So I like racing those because you're always finished quite up high and probably get some hardware. But the 1000 classes were just so hard to compete in. It's like, oh, they're killing me on the straightaway, but I'm gonna try to make it all up on the brakes. And I mean, if you have that mentality, you don't have an engine to rely on. You have to be good in the corners, the brakes, and getting back on the gas. And I found I improved a lot because I didn't have an engine to rely on. So you just have to focus on the skills and the technique rather than just brute force.
Well, man, I think, when you take someone like you, for instance, who it's not like you were born into this super wealthy racing family that you were handed all this stuff with a silver spoon. I Part of me also thinks like you have a real benefit in that you develop your skills rather than rely on the technology. And as you developed, now you gain attention from people, because you're against people who have money and who have a full team and sponsorship and things like that. And then you're like, wow, like this kid's fast and look what he's riding. And then that really plays to your benefit, where then when someone like you gets the technology, it's like the next level.
Oh yeah, it's I'm a huge proponent of start on crappy machinery, use it for a long time, and then upgrade, and you'll be floored about all the different technology. I've never had any electronics like traction control or ABS or wheelie control or anything like that. You don't need it. It would probably help, but yeah, you can get by without it. And then once you upgrade, you're like, wow, I just dropped 2 seconds, like just overnight.
Just like that. Yeah. So,
So
all right. So I got a question for you. So I've been hearing different opinions on this, and I'm curious what yours is. So I've heard some people say like, "Hey, go out and get something like an R7 or something that doesn't necessarily, some decent torque, but like not really a race bike, and you'll become a better rider because you can't rely on your straight speed and your overall velocity, and you'll have to learn how to be a better rider." And I've heard other people say like, no, go out and get like an R1 because now you'll learn how to handle a better bike and you'll be more comfortable with it instead of you'll having to relearn something later. um what do you think about those kinds of arguments?
I love that question because it comes up so many times. In America, we have no graduated licensing program in the States. And I'm fine with that. I think you should be able to buy whatever you want. But I think the European program is much, much better. And it's better for the riders in the long term. They have a program where I'm not sure of all the specifics, but it's something like you have to start on a lightweight bike before you move up to a middleweight bike, before you move up to the leader bike, the 1000cc bike. I think that's a great progression. And from firsthand experience, I have never rode a 1000cc motorcycle in my life that I can remember ever throwing my leg over one. The highest I've ever rode is a 600. I've been racing for 11 years. You do not need a 1000cc motorcycle. It's like a Ferrari that's 400 pounds. You don't need it. I've always said to myself, until I win a world championship on a 600, why do I need to move up?
Yeah.
Now I'm not exactly competing for world championships, but that's the mentality because my buddy Al, we started riding at the track about the same time. I think he was maybe a year or so earlier than me. We started racing at the same time, same weekend, and I was always 2 to 3 seconds faster than him per lap, and we're about the same skill level. We started out in novice at the same time, novice racing, and he had the 1000, I had the 600. There's so much power, you just can't use it all. It's like you're spinning up the rear tire all the time. Um, and he's, I would say, more scared to get on the power because of the risk of high side is much greater. I'd say you'll have a much more fun time on a 600 or even a SV650. That's a great class. The SV650s, the Twin Cup, I think is a really good place. It sounds like it's more power than a 600, right? 650, but it's technically it's kind of in the middle of the lightweight and the middleweight, the 400 and the 600. It's right in the middle there. That's a really great place to start too. A little less power than the 600, less torque, but still faster than a lightweight bike. And I would always advocate for start on the smallest CC machine that you can possibly ride without feeling stupid. I started on a 250. My dad's 250 is a scooter, CVT, no shifting. I rode a 250 for 2 years, and then I bought a '08 Kawasaki Ninja 250 for 2 years. I rode that for 2 years. So I rode a 250cc for 4 years before I got up to a 600. And then,
All right.
so yeah, start small, work your way up. And a couple of months after me getting a 600, I quickly got arrested for speeding. Like, just like that. I think I might have had that bike 3 months and I got arrested. So you can get in a lot of trouble on a 600 or more. So there's no need for that on the street. Like, when do you need to go 150 miles an hour on the street?
Yeah.
Never. So a 250 will still go over 100 miles an hour. You don't need much more than that. So just for not getting in trouble with the police, I'd say start on a small bike. And you'll have a lot more fun, and you'll learn more. You'll progress faster. If you have a 1000, I think you'll learn slower. It'll be harder to use that power. You'll be scared to get on the throttle. For me, on the 600, I can get to full throttle way sooner than a 1000 will because they just can't put that power down as easily.
Are you seeing a lot of people use like 400s anymore, or is 600 where most people are on the track? You're seeing them start.
I see a lot of people on the 600s, but the 400s are definitely coming back. I wouldn't say coming back. They're newer. The 400's a newer CC class. It used to be 250, then it went to 300. Now it's 400. Right. So technology is kind of progressing and giving us a little bit more power for those lightweight bikes. And my buddy Eric Garcia, he blew a head gasket at Grattan at July 4th weekend when I was there, so he couldn't ride his R6, and he borrowed I think his buddy's R3, 300cc Yamaha, and he said it was a blast. He said he had so much fun on it. He was considering buying one, I would like to buy a 400. Actually, I'm thinking of buying a 400cc motorcycle myself just for the street because the Supermoto is nice. I like it. It's a 300cc, technically 292, but it's not quite very stable at speed. Like at about 80 miles an hour, it starts to kind of shake sometimes because it's a dirt bike. It's not really meant to go 80 miles an hour. So it'd be nice to have a little faster, more stable street bike for grocery getting and riding around town. But also that'd be great for the racetrack because you go through tires less, it costs less. When you crash it, it's less. Like there's a lot of benefits to it, and you could race more classes. I could do another class with that bike. So I think that there's definitely a place for it, and bikes are a lot of fun. They get you in less trouble. You can still wheelie on them. You can stunt ride on them. You can do all sorts of stuff.
Dude, would a 400 still move with me on it? Like, I don't know, man. I'm like 210. I'm like a little worried here.
That's the problem with people who weigh a little bit more. They're like, oh, I need a bigger bike. Well, do you? I don't know. I mean, yes, you'd be slower and it'd be harder to keep up with somebody who's 60 pounds lighter than you. That's a massive amount of weight difference.
But what you're saying is totally true because I had an R6. And then for some reason, I don't know what I was thinking. This is like I said before, like, I got the 99 R6 was the first year. And then I grabbed an R1 and I never felt comfortable on it because I'm like, it had so much more than I could ever control. Like the R6, I felt like I was in control. Like, of course that could have been completely wrong, but like, I felt like I had a chance of like, wrestling this thing around and moving it. The R1, it just had so much bike. I just felt like I not only was I not using even close to what its capabilities were, but like I just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah. And now I'll say that probably riding a 1000 would be a blast just because you're wheeling everywhere. Like it's so much power. Like I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but for going your fastest pace, I'd say 600 is a better place to start.
Yeah. So, man, what do you see happening in the 600 class? Like, with we got the R7 now, and that thing's been like, I'm sure you've talked about this a bunch of times. It's like, people are going back and forth, the R6, and there's different schools of thought in that. But man, I'm like, I really wanted to get another R6, and now I'm like, shucks, I'm gonna have to, and I've been doing some research on what best years are out there, and I don't know what's gonna happen with the 600 class here.
I think it's a shame that the 600 class is going away in the professional series. It's now the 750 class, 750 plus, Ducatis, and they still have some R6s in there, but no more Yamaha R6 on the market. It's only going to be a race bike now, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure why they want to increase all the CCs. I think we're going fast enough. I mean, at a certain point, they're going to have to redesign all the racetracks because we're going too fast for the walls. But it's just the progression of things, and we'll see where it goes. I think, like I said, I think it's a shame that they're getting rid of it. That was always my favorite class to watch. It's the most affordable for everybody to participate in.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be more expensive for all the racers to do up their engines and buy a slightly faster bike. But I mean, Kawasaki still has a ZX6R. I'm a huge Kawi fan. And also, what other motorcycle can you buy as a 600cc race bike that's cheaper than the Kawasaki? It's $10,000 price point. I mean, I think everything else is at least $2,000 more.
So I didn't even realize they're still selling R6s even though they're only race models. Like, what are they charging for those?
I think they're like 12.5 or something like that. But yeah, I don't think they're street legal anymore. I think they're not coming with plates. They're just like a race model.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, man. And so who else? So who's making 650s now? Just Gixxers? What else?
Suzuki. I think Aprilia has a RS 660. That's pretty popular now. I think Caleb DeCarroll and Moto Americas. He's running that. A couple other guys are running those bikes, and Aprilia seems like they're really stepping up their support of these riders. So check out the Aprilias also.
Man, so my first bike ever. I didn't, by the way, I didn't know anything about bikes, and I just bought one because the guy that my gym was selling one was a ZX7, bro.
Oh yeah,
It was one of the ones. It was a '92 ZX7. It had these little like it looked like vacuum tubes coming out from the front fairing into the tank, which was
yeah,
totally like cosmetic. I don't think it actually did anything, but at the time I'm like, that's awesome. Like,
yeah, man. All the different technology and designs. I love seeing the progression through the years.
oh yeah, dude. It was, and yeah, that thing was a tank, but like it was still. I didn't know any better.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your thing going on. You got you're not a millionaire, but it's a Lifeonaire.
Yeah, man. So so this is really kind of crazy. Like I got in this organization back in 2009. I had a full-time job. I was working for the Navy, and I man, it's not that I'm a punk or that I'm a rebel, but I just hated the idea of working for somebody else. Like it just drove me nuts, and having to ask for time off and vacation and who I worked with and what I worked on, the whole thing, everything about it just nauseated me. And so I started looking into real estate investing, like flipping specifically, to get out of the job. And so I found this guy his name is Steve Cook, who was a super successful flipper in the Maryland area, which is where I was working in DC. And then he kind of coached me through my first three deals, and he developed this thing called Lifeonaire, basically. And the whole concept is essentially one day he's sitting down because he's coaching people, and everybody keeps telling him like, "Hey, Steve, I want to be a millionaire." And he's like, no, what you really want is the life you think the money's going to buy you. And like, so he came up with this concept, Lifeonaire. Actually, it was during his quiet time, the word Lifeonaire came to him. And so from that, he basically formed the business. He was a founder. I started, I started as a student in 2009, 2000, maybe 13 or so. I started coaching for them. And that now I'm partners with them. And like it's basically an events business as well as like a coaching and mentorship business. And essentially what we do is like, we help people. Our whole thing is like, hey, let's reverse engineer your business starting with your life. So like, for instance, we just got back from Nashville. I think I might've mentioned you, I was going to Nashville. I went to Nashville last week. We had an event. It's called the Get a Life Getaway. And the whole purpose is like, hey, let's help you figure out like literally exactly what you want your life to look like. And I don't mean on a like superficial level. I mean like really granular. Let's figure out what you want it to look like in every different area. And so we spend 3 days doing that. And it's definitely also, I want to clear this up too. It's not like a feel good approach to living like pie in the sky. It's like strategy. It's like we want to have an action plan. We want to have a blueprint for this life. So we help people create that. We call it their life and their vision. And then we have a second event, which is called our Business Builder Workshop. And so, well, here's what happens. Like, so not men, I would say most people will discover that they can't have a job, like a traditional 9 to 5 job, and still live like the ideal life they want to live. Like some people love their job and they want to stay there, but most people decide they want to go into business for themselves. And at the Get a Life Getaway, one of the exercises we do is like, hey, like how much, if you could design your ideal week, like what would you do? Like, so maybe you're going to the track like on Fridays and Saturdays, whatever it is, right? And so part of that exercise is like, hey, how much time do you have left for work? And sometimes people will discover like, hey, I only have 20 hours a week that I can work without giving up one of these cool things that I want to do. And so at the Business Builder Workshop, that's where we help you kind of design a business and like that can generate the money you need to live your vision. And so it's kind of like the life first and then business after. Everybody just wants to go into business first, but I think it's a mistake because we see people all the time that create businesses that aren't really suitable, like for what they want to do. Like they didn't think about or set up their business in a way that allows them to, work remotely or from Europe for 4 months a year, or if they want to travel around the country in an RV, going to tracks. Right. Yeah. And so that's what we help them with, man. It's awesome. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing this. Like I thought I was gonna be stuck behind a desk or in a lab somewhere. I was trained as a scientist, and here I am, man. It's super awesome. It's a blast.
Well, it's cool to hear about. So many people are looking for ways to get out of the 9 to 5, myself included. I do not have a regular day job anymore, thank goodness. But I'm trying to. I think I have like 9 part-time jobs now. like all sorts of different things. So it's like I'm trying to do more things in the motorcycle industry, things that I love with the USMCA coaching and hopefully CSS later for the California Superbike School and MSF or Motorcycle Safety Foundation. So trying to live in my passions, but still working for other people. You know, it's hard to sell e-commerce things online and make it your full-time job. It's you need so much volume. It's kind of crazy to me to see how much you really need to sell just to be profitable.
Well, man, I think, a lot of our people, and first of all, let me just back up. Like, I think it's awesome that you're doing that in your niche because, and now all you said you have all these different jobs, but it sounds like they're all, or most of them are under an umbrella as well of your passion. And so that's really
Yeah.
cool too. And so in your case, it's probably a matter of maybe consolidating and figuring out what I can make work and what's the most profitable as well as what gives me the most enjoyment. We do have a lot of people, that are in real estate investing, for instance. And some of them are passionate about it, and some of them aren't super passionate about it, but they enjoy what it does for them. And so, I always think it's best case scenario, you're doing what you love because it literally doesn't feel like work. Like, so
Yeah.
I, I don't feel like I work like now most of the time. Of course, sometimes I'm doing things that I want to do, but overall, like I feel like I get to do this. Um, and so the one thing I would say too is I think it's important for everyone to consider alternative sources of cash flow that don't require you. So that you don't have to be the one to generate it yourself. Like, so have some assets that generate cash flow. I think that's a big deal. So I got a buddy, his name is Russ, and several years ago he got brain cancer. And he's okay. Well, he's not he's had the surgery, but he's not 100%. Like he's not thinking, he's not functionally what he was. And he pulled me aside and he said, man, the one thing I wish I did was create a business that didn't require me. Because now they're struggling and his wife is supporting the family.
Yeah. If you don't figure out how to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die.
Man, that's so true.
That's I think
And
Warren Buffett said that one.
yeah, man, it's and it doesn't have to be, it could be something simple. Maybe, we have people that have like little Amazon businesses, or eBay businesses that, and maybe they don't spit off a lot of money. Maybe it's $1,000 a month, but that's still something, right? And that's $1,000 less that you have to make with your own effort. We have people that have, rental properties, or that we have a lot of people that have like, apartments or self storage, and there's all kinds of. I mean, there's a zillion different ways in real estate. But the key is like, how can you create something that and by the way, it's not just in case something bad happens to you. Like that's the bad part of it, but like it's so that you can go do the stuff you love. Like you can go on and tour tracks and go for like, hey, I'm gonna ride every track in the country here this year, and like
Yeah.
where I'm gonna get an RV, and like, and you don't have to worry about it. And so it's for the good stuff and the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Because man, I just don't feel like I during the Get a Life Getaway, we show this slide and it shows like an average week. And like, so the average week, you commute into work for maybe 20, 30 minutes. Maybe that's a little bit different now, like with most people working from home or a lot more people. But then you work all day doing something you don't love. You come home and you just decompress because you're exhausted. And so you are too tired to do the stuff you want to do. You can't go to the gym. You don't want to hang out with a spouse or go on a date or play with your kids. And like, that's Monday through Friday. And if you actually project that out over a full working career of what, 30, 40, 50 years, like it's crazy how little time you have left for the fun stuff. And so I just think there's a better way to do it. There's just a better model out there. And we've been following like an outdated model that, maybe that's what people did like, 50s and 60s, but here we are like, and I think there's way more alternatives out there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of different lifestyles you can choose and a lot of things you can do for sure. I think it's pretty cool that you're doing that and helping people out. It sounds like it's a great business.
Dude, it's a blast. I would do this for free. Like it's just I get to do this. I don't. That's another thing too. Is like I think people. I love the idea of a get to versus a have to. Like the
Oh yeah,
big, you know.
for sure. And so if somebody wanted to join one of your courses, where would they go or what do they do?
Yeah, man, they should just totally just head over to lifeonaire.com. It's LifeOnaire. Or we have a private Facebook group, which is you don't have to be a Lifeonaire member to be a part of, and it's just basically a supportive, encouraging community for people to kind of just interact with each other and say, hey, help each other. Really, it's just like really helpful. And you can find us on Facebook over there too by searching Lifeonaire.
Okay. Are you on Instagram or YouTube? Yeah, I got videos out there.
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. If you just search Lifeonaire, we got a bunch of videos up. We have a podcast of which you, my friend, will be getting as a guest. I can't wait to have you on.
Heck yeah.
That's on YouTube too. We have we have our podcast. You have all kinds of other videos up there as well.
Nice. And we met at the California Superbike School, just talking with the coaches at
Yeah,
lunch. And you're like, oh, we should connect sometime. So
I
it's
know, man. I was just I loved your story and what you're doing here, and I had a lot in common.
for sure, for sure. So, anything else on your mind you wanted to talk about today?
Man, I would just say like I really enjoyed catching up with you, but I think people what you're doing is awesome, and the one thing that struck me is like that I want everybody to grasp here is like I feel like once you achieve a level of proficiency in something, like whether you're a real estate investor and adding another zero to your bank account doesn't float your boat anymore. It doesn't matter. Or, you're a championship racer who now you're like, yeah, I have all these trophies. I have all these plaques. I have all these, all these awards. At some point it becomes not about you, but about like giving to the next generation, giving to people who aren't there yet. And you're doing it. I'm doing it. Like, and it's just this common thing. I think that when you realize it's not all about you, but you can help other people, like that's where the best part of all of it is. Like, it feels so good.
Yeah, you're giving back. You're finally contributing to your community, and feels good. I feel like before I was working a full-time job at an aluminum company, and I think I shipped. Pretty sure the number is 875 million pounds of material in like 3.5 years, almost a billion pounds. But I didn't like it. I didn't like that job at all. It was the best paying job I've ever had. So I love that aspect of it. But I didn't like it. It was all paperwork. Here's a stack of paperwork. All right, you done with that? Here's another stack of paperwork. You done with that? Here's another stack of paperwork. I'm like, it never ends.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. Like, I was good working in an office. I was efficient. I was quick, accurate. Just wasn't things that I liked doing. So like if I can surround myself with motorcycles and teach people how to ride motorcycles and teach them at the racetrack and in the parking lot, and I'm starting to make money with this podcast. Like,
Yeah, man.
I
It's
never thought
awesome.
that would happen. Like, I'm trying to get businesses to run ads, or me run ads for them and advertise for them, but also just people watching it. There's ad revenue coming in from that, and for some guests, they will help promote the episode with money too, so that I promote the episode that way. There's like 3 or 4 different ways to make money with a podcast now, and then hopefully somebody heads over to EricSwahnRacing.com or shopesr.com and buys something from me from watching this. Um,
Yeah.
I'm also an authorized dealer of 35 motorsport brands. I think 22 are motorcycle, sport bike related. I got some car parts and mountain bike parts and motocross as well. So trying to be all over the motorsport scene and just get my name out there. It's
Well,
pretty,
man, and I was just gonna say, like, you're the guy who's gonna be successful and who's gonna do well with it because you live it, you breathe it, you love it.
yeah.
And it's, so I remember when I was in a lab for my grad school, and my boss, and well, let me back up. I I would do the bare minimum to get by because I didn't love it. But I also realized that the guy or the girl who was in there off hours, late at night, they're in the trenches, they love it, and they lived and breathed it. Like, they were going to kick my butt if I tried to compete with them. And so that's where I realized I have to align myself with what I'm passionate about. And so I believe fully, man, like, you have the heart, you have the skills. And for you, it's just a matter of like continuing to let that flourish and grow. And the more people that learn about you and what you're up to, like, it's gonna be the natural evolution. It's just a matter of time, man. And so I'm excited for you, brother.
Well, thanks a lot for your vote of confidence. It means a lot. I was walking down the street in Royal Oak a couple months ago, and my truck was parked. I was just walking back to my truck, and I got ESR stickers all over it, and trying to advertise when I drive by, and someone I saw two guys walking towards me, and they pointed to my truck, and they're like, "Oh, that's Eric Swann." I'm like, they didn't see me walking, but they saw me get in their truck, and they started laughing. Oh, like that was Eric Swann, and I'm like, do these
Dude.
guys really know like that logo? Like they actually know what that is? Like that's amazing. I didn't know them at all. I never saw, I didn't talk to them, but they knew what that was, and I was like, holy shit! Like this is
How
finally.
cool is that?
And I was just telling my mom that last night on the phone, and she's like, well, I said, yeah, I'm gonna be an overnight success in 10 years.
But dude, and don't forget to your mom though, you're always gonna be like Eric, like, dude, your family, like, so I'm saying, yeah, man, that's just the way it is, dude. But that's so cool, man. Hey, I mean, go get a bunch of pairs of sunglasses right now and hoodies, because like people are gonna start recognizing you, man. You're gonna have to cover up and go out in public.
I hope so. That's I'd be starstruck or something.
Right. That's awesome, brother.
We'll see where it progresses. But so I wanted to hear a little bit more about your real estate stuff and your investing and all that. Tell me a little bit about the flips that you were doing.
Yeah, man. So I started off with flips because that's what Steve had done a lot of, and that's where like it was hot at that time. Like so I started off in flipping in '09. Well, actually, I don't know if I don't know if my first deal was '09. It could have been somewhere around there. And man, dude, I made half my year's salary in one deal. So I made like 33 grand and some change. And I'm like, I'd never seen that kind of money in my entire life. I'm like,
Yeah.
holy crap! Like people like work an entire year for this kind of money. And so I was like, it really redefined, we've been talking about like fear and perspective. And for me, it kind of redefined like what was possible. Cause I didn't, up to that point, man, that first deal, it took me 82 offers to find that first house. And I was ready to give up. And my coach, Steve, was like, keep going. I'm telling you, keep going, keep going. Trust me, trust me, trust me, keep going. Like the power of a coach, right?
Yeah.
And he kept me going. I got that first deal. And that was where I'm like, this is awesome. Like, work a full year or do two deals and make the same amount of money. And like, so that's where for me it started. And so I did three deals my first year, quit my job in 11 months. And from then I actually from there went into new construction because the problem with flips, well, there's a couple problems. One main one is that everybody wants to flip because like HGTV, Flip This House, all these other shows are out there. So everybody's like, ooh, this is cool. And so there's a lot of newbies coming in competition that quite frankly, oftentimes overpay for the house and they end up getting hurt and they don't do another one because they don't want to, repeat that mistake. Yet there's somebody else to come and step in their shoes. And so it's a little bit more competitive. Now that being said, there's still plenty of people that make a great living off of flipping. But that was one drawback to me. The other drawback is that like, no matter how good of a job you do in estimating your repairs, you will always, I've never been on ever. I've
Yeah.
always, always, always missed stuff or gone over budget. And, now I do account for that. Like, so I had a little margin that I expected to be okay with, like, hey, this can happen and I'll still be fine. But the problem is like, you open up the walls and you find aluminum wiring or someone comes and whatever happens and you just run into these unanticipated expenses. Plus it's hard to systemize a flipping business because each flip is different. Like each one needs different things. It's not like they're all the same. And so the thing I liked about new construction is that like there was less competition for it. You could find these they're called infill lots, which are basically like an empty lot, like in your subdivision. So like this is a subdivision, it's already built out, except maybe there's a couple lots that are empty in there because the builder didn't finish it. And you find those. And now I've back in my office here, I have blueprints, I have plans. I'm like, hey, let's do this model. Let's
Yeah.
do throw up the Warwick. And I know exactly what it's going to cost. I know exactly what materials I need. The guys know the job. It's not this one off. And so that was really much more systemizable to me. So I went into that. And then from there, it's kind of like a progression, like we were talking about from like to coaching people. Like I started realizing like, and I had some experience as a landlord, had rental property. But I really kind of started enjoying lending money more. Because now I could find people that I trusted and I knew had competency. And so I started investing with them. And so now like I invest with other people. I got a couple of storage facilities that I'm a partner in. and some other things that like now I'm no longer personally active, but like rather I'm like kind of like the silent partner. And so all my efforts recently, and actually that coincided pretty closely with me taking on more roles in Lifeonaire, because I realized I couldn't do all of it. Like I can't be a real estate investor. At that time I was coaching for Lifeonaire and speaking for Lifeonaire. And then Steve wanted me to kind of partner with him to run the company. And I'm like, man, I can't do all of these well.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard sometimes too for people, because you know, uh, you have a lot of opportunities. Like, and if you're fairly good at some things, it can be a curse in terms of like helping you. What's the thing that you're best at, and like how can you focus on that? Because like when I was even before I did stuff with Lifeonaire, like I had multiple businesses, and the problem is like my efforts were so diluted that none of them was producing the results I knew it was capable of. And so like, okay, here's this one's making a little bit here, this one's making a little bit there. And I had a lot of frustration. I'm like, they should all be doing way better than they were. And I realized it was because my efforts were so scattered. And so like I let go of the real estate investing, I let go of the coaching for Lifeonaire. And so now I really focus on just speaking and running the company. And then the investments are really what help me with cash flow and things like that, so that it's still not dependent on me. I think having a business that you can structure as well in a way that doesn't depend on you is important too. So like for instance, I've been very careful as I've taken this role on to like make sure that, if something happens to me or if I don't want to work, the business doesn't crash, right? Because then I don't want it to stop with me or Steve, right? We want this thing to continue without us. And so that's kind of how the real estate's gone. We're in an interesting time where right now with real estate, man, there's all kinds of people that are talking about like prices adjusting, and the 0809 crash, people that were in that market like got hurt pretty bad, a lot of them. So we're probably approaching a little bit of a tumultuous time here in real estate.
But the good thing about real estate is, yes, the market goes up and down, and the housing prices are kind of through the roof right now. $30,000 over asking price for some of these houses.
Yeah.
But people will always need a place to live.
Yeah.
They're not going to go. Not everybody's going to be homeless, so everybody's going to need some sort of shelter.
Well, and people have different strategies for that too. So, like for instance, I have friends who are like, "Hey, I'm gonna go for first time home buyer houses and entry price point homes," and typically those are the ones that are going to do better in a market where there's always a demand for it. Versus sometimes like the higher end homes, people sometimes aren't going to go for those properties, and they take longer to sell, and there's more investment. I have friends who are like, no, I'm really passionate about low income housing, and so they're doing, for instance, like Section 8 or housing voucher kind of houses, and their argument is like, well, hey, the government's going to pay me every month, and I don't have to worry about like getting all the money from the tenant, and they feel like that's more guaranteed. And so there's so many different approaches to it. But yeah, you're right, man. It's like, and they don't make any more land, and everybody needs a place to live, whether it's an apartment or a single family home. I have some buddies who are doing short-term rentals, like the Airbnb stuff, the VRBO stuff, and some of them got kind of hurt with all the COVID stuff, and they're doing okay now. But like whatever investment you pick, I think you just got to think through the different angles of like, what are the pros and cons, and really, look to people who are doing it and try to learn the lessons they've learned, and make a decision on which one you want to focus on. You can't do all of them. Like you're not going to be successful if you try all of them.
For sure. And I wanted to go back to what you said about putting 80 some offers before you got your first deal. How long does something like that take to put in 80 different offers?
It was months. So what I was doing is, and the strategy I was using is like, I would make an offer it's called sight unseen. So I would find the property in the MLS, or like on the HUD. HUD has a store. HUD is the government's organization that deals with houses in the housing authority, basically stuff. And so they'd have houses for sale. So I would look at houses online, and based on the photos, I would make an offer based on what I believed it would need. And the reason I did that, and usually they were just rejected straight out, or sometimes they counteroffered. Now, if they were rejected straight out, to me, that showed that they weren't, because the whole thing with real estate investing is you're not buying from somebody who doesn't need to sell because you offer, you're offering less than they can get with an agent. But excuse me, but not everybody wants to go with an agent because it takes a long time and like there's a lot of paperwork. And they have to get it ready or fixed or cleaned up or, or renovated, and they just don't want to deal with it. And so you're buying from somebody who really has to sell. Like they just don't want to deal with it. Like it's a headache. Like we actually just moved into a new house here a couple months ago. And my old house, like I got 2 girls at home. I got a dog. The walls are all scratched up. The carpets are matted. Like, I'm like, I don't want to touch this thing. And so I actually sold it to an investor, and it really made me appreciate how much value we bring to the table. But to that point, so I'm making these offers sight unseen. And if I got a counter offer, that showed me, and if it was close, like if they came like $10, sometimes people would just mess with me and they'd counter offer me more than the original list price of the house. They're like trying to basically say, screw you. Yeah. But if they came back with a reasonable offer, I would go back, and now I would go do a detailed evaluation of what the property needed. Like, so I could really go visit the property. Because otherwise, like, I didn't want to just visit a property if I was going to waste my time. So I was filling out 10, sometimes 20 offers a week. Oh, wow. To get this done. But it took me several months, but before it was all done. But I was ready to give up, man. Like, and it was somebody there helping me and coaching me through it that made it a possibility.
Yeah, if you have somebody who's 5, maybe 10 years ahead of where you are, you can really see them excel, kind of walk in their footsteps, and gain a lot of information and knowledge from them.
Dude, well, think about it this way. Like, you're coaching somebody in the track, right? And maybe you follow them for a couple laps, or they follow you, you pull them into the pit, and you're like, hey, here's what I noticed. You're doing this, and like, this is what we need to work on. Okay, let's go out there and again and try it. And let me watch you. Nope, you're still doing it. Like, no, like, hey, try that, And so that someone who, how long have you been in racing now? Like
11 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody who has 2 years experience just catapulted their success forward by learning from you, right?
Yeah.
It's just such a benefit. And sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know if it's worth hiring a coach and paying the money. I'm like, listen, I totally get it. Like, money's been tight for me many times in my life. However, I'd encourage you to just kind of reconsider this for a second, like, because there's a cost to you not getting the result you want. There's a cost to you making the mistakes in yourself. There's a cost to all the time you're losing and making the mistakes. And so, like, people don't account for that. Like, and I think having a coach is a great thing, man. Like, I mean, how many successful athletes do you know that have paved their own way without a coach? Not many. Like, even, Michael Jordan had a coach, and everybody you can think of has a coach. I just think it's valuable.
Yeah, Valentino Rossi has a riding coach. Like, I don't know if he does now because he's not in MotoGP, but he did when he was racing all those years. And one of the most winningest racers ever has a coach.
Yeah, right.
That's extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. I'm with
you. Yeah, it'll definitely reduce your mistakes, your time to learn. I think it's great. And when I took my first set of real coaching, I took the Jason DeSalvo Speed Academy. And that was back in 2012. And I almost won national championship twice by 1 second. So I won 6 races in a row right after taking it to school. I was like, this works. Like, holy crap. It just gave me so much confidence to go out there and do the things that I should have been doing in the first place. But when you have someone telling you, okay, it's okay to do this. Like, I said, what's the risk of me, tipping the bike in faster? Like, going from a slow tip in to a fast tip in. It's like, nothing really. Like, there's no danger there as long as you're not getting on the throttle too hard as you're increasing your lean angle. You can get to basically max lean immediately. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. I thought I was risking something. It's like, there's no risk there. Just get to your max lean angle immediately. Don't wait around.
Right. And how long that could have taken you a long time to figure out on your own, right? He just learning and leaning on his confidence is a big deal, man.
Sure. So anything in the news or current events you wanted to touch on?
Man, I think well, we got all this talk about like a recession, or are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? Like, I don't know if this is going to gain me any fans, or people are going to send me and you hate mail on this, man. But I would say, don't worry about it too much. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, whoever's in office can have an effect on your life. yes, whatever the political or environmental situation in life is going on, like, yes, all that's, I realize all this stuff is important. I'm not saying to be ignorant with it, but what I'm telling you, man, at the end of the day, I see people who focus on you and your family and your loved ones. What can you do to insulate and protect yourself, like, against whatever happens, like whether it's COVID, whether it's, a change of office or whatever, like, or changing in the marketplace, like, just focus on you. Like, you'll be way, I'll give you an example, man. I get a buddy who loved to death, but he is so wrapped up in everything that's going on, and he's kind of a conspiracy theorist a little bit, which I'm like, okay, man, like, all right, I'm listening. I'm not gonna just, like, whatever, we're still friends. Maybe there's some truth to it, maybe there's not, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Like, or should you be worrying about, like, hey, how can I make my business more successful? Hey, how can I bulletproof my life in a way that no matter what curveball life throws at me, I'll be okay? And, like, so that's one thing I think, man, that regardless of, because the news can be scary, man. That's kind of part of, like, how they sell stuff is, like, fear sells.
Yeah.
And so the more they can kind of scare you a little bit, the more you're going to pay attention. The more you pay attention, the more views they get. The more views they get, the more money they make. And so I would just say, just kind of stay calm. Maybe even consider being a little bit. I don't. I want to say this carefully. Maybe even consider unplugging a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, some of constantly being on CNN or Fox or whatever. I'm not sure it's good for you. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure it's really
agree
going to
with
help your
that.
life.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've been a cable cutter. I don't have cable for the last long since I moved out of my parents' house. I think long time ago, 12 years ago. I have not had cable, so I don't like watching it. So I went to the diner, got breakfast the other day, and they had this TV in the corner, so I was kind of glancing at it, and I actually I think 3 out of 4 stories that I watched were about murder and death. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why?
I
And the
know,
other one was
man.
a fire.
It's like, that's what I mean. Like, but, and yes, I realize you can't just bury your head in the sand about everything in life, but at the same time, is this really helping you have a good day? Is this
Probably
really
not.
helping you, like, focus on what you need to focus on? I don't think so. Like, I find myself getting distracted, and if I read an upsetting news article, I'm like, man, like, gosh, like that. And it bothers me, and I think about it, and it takes me off my game. And, like, so, like, I think it's probably a fine balance that everyone has to navigate individually. But at the same time, if you find yourself getting upset, getting distracted, um, and it's not adding to the quality of your life, like, get it out. And that's not just news, but, like, even, and kind of expanding the conversation a little further than that. Like, if you have things in your life that aren't serving you, take another look at it. Maybe you have people in your life even that, like, are always pulling you down, or they're always negative, or they're always have something to complain about, like, or aren't happy for you. Like, I don't know. Like, is this helping you or hurting you?
For sure, you should definitely do a lot of self-reflection and assess those things so you can live a better life.
It's so true, man. Like, I think, yeah, just it's all those things. It's like putting yourself in a situation that, like, just, you're doing what you love, you're around people that are happy for you and want to help you, and you're not kind of getting poisoned by, some of the things that might be contaminating, your chance of success. Like, and that's what it's all about. I think that's how people get ahead, really.
For sure. And while I still got on my mind, I wanted to give a shout out to my cousin, Tony Paints. He makes hand painted signs, stripes, and murals. And I've gotten some hand painted from him a couple different times. I have a plaque. I don't know if you know are familiar with Jocko Willink.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
He's got a discipline equals freedom
Yeah.
mentality. So I had him paint on a long board, just discipline equal sign freedom and a little border around it. So I got that in my business area because really, it's so true. If you
It
have
is.
discipline, you can have pretty much whatever you want. And Tony, he's a great painter. He's been doing murals on the side of like tattoo shops and like painting different things on their windows and all kinds of different all sorts of different materials he can paint on. I know he's done a gym logo like 50 feet high in a basketball gym.
Oh
Pretty nice
wow.
gym. Um, he's done like those huge on the side of a building Werner sign that are like 100 feet wide by 50 feet tall, helping touch up those different signs. So he's been pretty talented with it and trying to give him some shout out.
Oh man, that's phenomenal. What a skill, man. That takes some real like that's a real gift.
Yeah, he was always like a huge graphic design guy in like high school, and making T-shirts, all kinds of different T-shirts. He's drawn. I think one of them was he was just bored in art class, and he was doodling all over his notebook, and he actually turned it into a T-shirt one day. So
Oh man, all right.
that's pretty cool. But yeah, man. So that's an hour and a half. We could probably cut it here, and we'll be talking another 2 weeks or so on your episode. So I'm happy
Love it,
you're
man.
on here, and we can connect.
Thanks for having me on, brother. All the best. Catch you soon.
I'll get this edited and posted pretty soon here, and be sure to tag you.
Sounds good. See you, man.
Thanks. Have a good one.